a show with some ladies from FMO. Just to give a little bit of an introduction, so FMO was launched in 1983. And it is a Leicester-based charity which is designed to help and support Muslim communities. It's a registered charity, and it helps with things like education, housing, and social welfare. And in the studio with me today, I have two lovely guests. I'm going to ask Shifa to introduce herself first. She's a long-standing member of the FMO. And then I'm going to ask Asma to say a little bit about herself, and she is a project manager and probably slightly newer to FMO. So over to Shifa first. Can you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shifa, and like Sabiha just said, I'm an executive committee member for FMO. I've been with them for about 14 years now. So alhamdulillah, yeah, that's me.
Okay, lovely. And Asma, can you say a little bit about yourself?
Assalamu alaikum, Sabiha. So yeah, I'm Asma. I've recently joined the FMO team to support with some project management and some change.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So Shifa, you're obviously our long-standing member. Can you tell the listeners at home who FMO is?
Right, so FMO, firstly, it stands for Federation of Muslim Organisations. It's an umbrella body, and it represents and reflects the voices of the Muslim community. In fact, Sabiha, we've been around for 4 decades. And so that's like 40 years. This year is our 40th anniversary. And in terms of an umbrella body, what that means is if a community member's got an issue, they could take it to one of their umbrella body affiliates, and they will bring it to FMO, and we'll take it forward in whichever manner necessary. Just so you know, there's about 200 affiliates. They represent things like the local masajids, charities, schools, other Leicester-based Islamic organisations. So there's 200 of them. They're under the umbrella of FMO. Anything the local community has, they'll take them to the the affiliate, and they'll bring it forward to us.
So is it like a membership? Do they kind of apply to you?
They do have a membership. They do have a membership. Obviously, there are certain concessions, but usually it is on a membership basis, and then they would be allowed to vote. Just so we know, it's a nominated organisation. It's not something that people just put themselves forward. Although we are all volunteers, every single person, there's not one who's actually employed. We're all volunteers, but we are voted in. Okay. And that's very important to mention. So it's not just somebody saying, oh, I can do it. It's other people recognising that they're up for the job, and there'll be a good representation.
I was talking more about the affiliates. So you talked about your 200 members. Do they apply for membership to your organisation as well?
They do. On many cases, if we see there's voids in certain communities that we think they're not having equal representation, we'll approach them and say, well, would you like to come on board? Okay. And most of the time, they're really open for it, because I think in unity, we work better as a community.
Absolutely.
So that's
absolutely. I like that.
Just one thing, we are non-sectarian organisation as well. It's really important to say.
Can you explain that to the listeners at home?
Okay, so a lot of people, they have different like beliefs. So, you know, you have the Sunni Shia, then you have the Barveli, you have all the different sectarians, right? FMO does not discriminate.
Oh, mashallah, okay.
This is something to just bring all the Muslims on one platform, so that we could carry the community forward and get our voices heard. So it's not about do you believe in this, or do you believe, we try and accommodate everyone. And if on certain days there's people that have certain beliefs, then we let them get on, and as long as they're happy.
And that's what you said, unity, which is fabulous.
Yeah.
So, and what do you think, I mean, you talked about 4 decades. Yeah. What do you think FMO has achieved, in your opinion, in the 4 decades?
Can I just retract you one bit? I just wanted to tell you that we work with different sectors, including the local and national governments. We're a statutory body, and we make sure that the Muslim community are properly considered in policy making and decisions within the community as well. And just one other thing. See, I wanted to get these points across, because, you know, so many people have approached me in the last 4 or 5 weeks saying, well, what do you guys do?
Oh, absolutely. And this is your platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So just to let you know that we work on a local and national government level. When the FMO started, it was mainly around things like, you know, basic needs. You know, 40 years ago, the Muslim community needed things like having halal food in place, having burials for Muslims, establishing our mosques at the ground level. Because 40 years ago, we didn't have the infrastructure of mosques that we have today, and the maktabs. And over the years, one thing I think everybody will realise is our challenges have really, really changed, and we've evolved as a community. And we've become more diverse. We've become, as an external form, we impact people in their daily lives, not just their basics. You know, things like halal food, mashallah. We've got HMC.
We take it for granted.
Yeah, but also these organisations like HMC, they are under FMO as well. Right. So if there's any issues like that, again with the masajids, burial, it's you know, COVID would have told you that that was something so pivotal.
Oh no, absolutely.
There was so many, like for instance, there was a point where there were so many deaths in the community that the Somalian community were approached about getting cremations done in mass, and we had to get the government involved, and we had to get the people on the right seating to make sure that is.
And
not
this is what
happening.
FMO does, is it at the ground level? Okay.
Yeah. So, but it's also knowing people at different levels and having that, having that reputation where actually we are trusted as an organisation on both sides, not just community, but also by the councillors, by the mayors,
the official organisations within the community. Okay, no, that makes sense. So that's quite a lot of information for the listeners at home. And so within that, I mean, you've talked a little bit about some of your achievements. Obviously, you've mentioned COVID. What other achievements? And you mentioned kind of halal food, and you mentioned establishing communities 40 years ago, Muslim communities or services for the Muslims within the community. What other achievements do you think the FMO have had?
Okay, we'll need a couple of hours for this. It's really funny because
give us some highlights.
Sabiha, when people ask us, "What have you done?" I'm like, "Where should we begin?"
No, absolutely.
But like, look, when we talk about halal foods, right? One of the things they've done, which comes to mind, is they worked with the local community, local authority to get fully compliant halal food in schools. So for our children, to have that, because there was a scandal a couple of years back about contamination.
Okay.
And we had to make sure that was addressed, that at what level, really do the research. And it wasn't just school. We then went on to get that done in hospitals as well.
And I remember that from when my father was in hospital. Mashallah, he was eating better than we were eating at home.
And see, it's really important because one of the main reasons the elderly Muslim people don't want to stay in hospitals is the food.
Of course.
And as much as we think that's trivial, when you're staying there, you're not around your family, especially in the COVID period as well, because they couldn't have family members bringing food in, and it was really, really sad. So going back to the hospitals as well, the other thing they've done is, which I love this, is they worked with Muslim organisation, it was Rahma Mercy, and they introduced the dignity gowns.
Okay.
Now, when Muslim females go in and they have to do X-rays, they were often really anxious and nervous because a lot of their haya was not.
No, because you have those little strings that they tie at the back, and that's about it.
And sometimes you would have the male wardens following you, and I know that so many women, not just elderly, even young women, we're not used to that, and they feel so uncomfortable. And we got the dignity gowns where now they're all covered, and actually that's being rolled up and down the country now.
Oh, fabulous!
So that was a major project that we were really happy with. Also, if you go to the Royal Infirmary now, you'll see they've got a lovely interfaith room, and they've expanded it, and that was something that we did a lot of behind the work collaboration with the hospitals to try and get that done.
And that's something as well, as an aside, that inshallah we're raising for as a radio community at the moment. We're raising to make the spiritual room even bigger and better, inshallah, and I'll talk more about that at the end of the show, but do continue, Shifa.
But we've also established multi-faith chaplains. Safe circumcision. Now, one of our pivotal things when we have children is really important that we get them circumcised at a younger age. But before FMO, a lot of it wasn't really safe. It wasn't regulated.
It was happening
and we'd heard all
behind
these
the
horrible stories. Recently, we've had a lot of hate crime, and it wasn't recorded, and FMO wanted to get that done. So we had things where we were working very closely with the police, advising police in policy matters as well. And also, I know, I'm just thinking, on many occasions, they've also given evidence on various national reviews in relation to counterterrorism, to stop and search on big issues that directly impact on Muslims, and particularly our young people. Now, I know that's a hot topic and people don't really like to talk about that.
Just careful what you say.
And everybody hushes us away by the frown on your face. But the thing is, our young people were being affected, and they're our children.
Oh, absolutely.
And there was a bit of
and we have a responsibility, and I guess FMO kind of fulfills that responsibility.
But we've got such a good relations with the local police that to get them to understand our point of view, we needed to be sitting at those tables, and they took it on board, and they were so good. They were so good, and there were so many things that they changed on policy level, and that was because of the conversations behind the doors. And sometimes this isn't something that's out there, and people think, well, what were you doing at that time? But when most of us us were at home. We had a couple of our EC top senior members all week sitting in meetings, 2-3 weeks on end, trying to get that in place.
And this is all happening behind the scenes.
And all volunteers as well. And you know, sometimes people are very quick to say, well, what did you do? But it's not, sometimes the advertising is all not there because the work needs to be done on a discrete level.
Oh, no, absolutely, because there's safeguarding on the one level, but there's data protection as well. So I guess there's those things to consider.
There is. And we've supported so many masajids with their planning applications and maktabs in different areas. And now, as people are choosing to live further afield, that's really important because you've got a lot of areas where people think, well, do we really need that? But actually we do. And we were also instrumenting, this was one of the things that I remember, and I'm really glad they did this. Right at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, they were very, very instrumental in getting all the masajids and the clinicians together to discuss what was happening about the pandemic. And Sabiha was horrible because when they got there, when they first gave the figures, and it was literally 1/10 of what actually did happen in COVID, and it woke up our community because at this point we still had a lot of people saying, no, we still need to have jamaats, we still need to do this and like that because to us that is the heart of the Muslim community, the mosque. And when we told them the figures, they were so horrified, and quickly everyone together. It was the first time I saw the Muslim community in this age. Nobody argued. They all got on board. United. They all worked very united, but all working in the same direction. And do you know what that made me realize? That if we all work in the same direction, how strong we can be.
We can achieve so much more.
So much. And basically, in the end, the figures they gave the clinicians, it was only 1/10 of what actually happened to our community as a whole. Not just Muslims, but the whole of Leicestershire in terms of deaths and illnesses and stuff. I'm just thinking that there's so many things that are going through my face.
Absolutely.
Recently, a really hot topic, and I think Asma will agree as well, that when they had they had a lot of hostility a couple of months back with the Hindu community and the Muslim community.
That's right.
And a lot of people were saying, well, we had to be really, really delicate with the situation because I think everything was out of control. And we did a lot of interfaith work, working with the community to get the seniors of the Hindu community on board and to be, a lot of them in public, I think even they were scared of the community to admit any fault.
But FMO have always done interfaith work from what I can remember from my own personal experience.
The reason I'm talking about this topic is it was said in the media, like all over, even with the young Muslims, what are you guys doing? You're not representing. And actually to get those senior Hindu members to admit we are wrong, but we ourselves have that fear factor to say that in the public because our youth are out of control and we need to get them settled and basically we need to get control of the situation.
That's a whole other conversation anyway with our youth.
But that was our primary concern, to get the Indian young youth under control, right? So then we could actually talk at a level which is understandable to everybody. We've supported so many things, even masajids, in institutions with Ofsted inspections. In the past, I think we were a bit distant from that. And Ofsted was we all had this fearful thing of, oh my God, like that. When actually a lot of the work was already in place. It was just getting it on the right paperwork and things like that. So there was a lot of negative media attention given to that as well. So we had to just take them under the umbrella and just say to them, look, you've got everything in place. You just need it on the right documentations. And that was, I think, the concern, because often there was a lot of naiveness. No, we've got it in place. It'll be looked at. But actually, if you don't fill in the right form,
no, absolutely, you need the paperwork to support what it is that you're doing.
We've worked with local councillors to also fund, funding for the Eid festival. So that's quite relevant now. Everybody's talking about the Eid festival, and you don't realise the amount of funding that needs to go into that. And
when you mean funding, do you mean funding as in you want money to be provided, or you're talking about paperwork that needs to be filled to generate the income?
No, it's actually on the day, like things like, sometimes people say, well, if it's in a park and if roads are getting closed and everything, it's not actually costing, but it's costing the local government.
Right.
And when they're getting extra police there, they're getting, extra litter picking done, they're getting the actual promotion done, all this costs, and it is a very heavy bill.
And is this where FMO come in? Is this where FMO make the decisions?
So we worked with the councils, not so much making the decisions, but promoting the local councillors to promote the festival, where then actually a budget is put aside for the faith groups. And most faith groups
Okay.
do have that, but a lot of people don't tap into it. Just
No,
like
I have heard this before,
I work
actually.
for Leicestershire County Council, and we just were talking yesterday in the inclusion and diversity that we've got funding for synagogues, for temples, for mosques,
But nobody's requesting.
for the festivals, but nobody's requesting. So FMO has done that, and I've really got to mention this. Our flagship project that's been going from strength to strength over the last 10 years is the safeguarding of madrasas, which we just touched upon with Ofsted, but this is a safeguarding project which our own Maulana Muhammad Patel does, where he offers DBS checks, training, support to ensure that children are safeguarded in mosques. You know, in the past, sometimes so many issues had come up, and even to safeguard our own children, because like in the mainstream schools and private schools, yes, they are in a teaching environment, but they need to be safe there as well.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, I hear where you're coming from, and it sounds like you're making masses of headway in that particular project as well. I mean, I want to bring in Asma, because I know Asma's been sitting very patiently over there. Shifa's told us a lot about absolutely a lot of amazing things that have happened over the last 4 decades, and obviously more recent things as well in kind of in the last 10 years. But moving forward, Asma, what does FMO want to achieve as we move forwards?
I think going forward, as we've just listened to some absolutely amazing achievements over the last number of years, I think the challenge that we find, and one of the reasons why I've been brought on board, is really to engagement. I think one of the biggest gaps has been bringing everybody onto this united journey and showcasing everything that we're delivering, and how it benefits the community. So I think we recognise that we're all extremely unique. We've all got, very different thoughts of belief. Leicester consists of many different nationalities. I mean, we've got 77 massages, almost 200 different establishments. There's about 100,000 Muslims in Leicester. So
Wow, mashallah.
we are very, very, very diverse. And I think what FMO wants to now do is embark on a new journey where we bring everybody together. There has been various, different schools of thoughts or different directions. But everything that FMO is achieving and wants to achieve, it is solely for the benefit of the community to bring everybody together. And now's the time where we're saying, okay, let's unite, let's put our differences aside, and let's move forward, and let's become a stronger body. Other communities have done this.
Oh gosh, yeah.
We should most definitely be on this ladder to start achieving this. So, what we want to achieve is start building on really advocating for the Muslim community. We want to start creating those discussions, and some of those discussions are difficult discussions. We want to start talking about the employment, health, Islamophobia, women's rights, cost of living crisis. And we want to be at the forefront of having these discussions openly with the appropriate institutions and services. We want to ensure that the institutions and services and everybody has the opportunities available to them. I think a lot of the feedback is very much like, well, we didn't know that was available to us. We didn't know that we could come to you for this. We didn't know that even existed.
No.
So it's really about making sure that our community are really clear on where they can go to for that help, for that support. So yeah, and
how can they? And I mean, you're talking about informing our community. I'm not saying now, because I know it's obviously a journey, and we're at the beginning of that journey. Where will they be able to find that information?
So the aim is to really evolve FMO into this. Into a brand which lives in everybody's households, in everybody's institutions. So people will recognise the name and know where to go to and how. And I'll move on to kind of what we're thinking on how we want to achieve this.
Primarily, to answer that, they would go to their affiliate, the affiliate that would come to us. So primarily, if they had a concern, they'd go to their massages.
I mean, where are you? Presumably you're on Instagram. Presumably you have a website.
We have
Facebook. Are these all
Facebook.
Platforms where
these are all platforms that are open, and we're at a stage now where we want to enhance them so they're a lot more accessible, a lot more easier to use.
I think that's what I was getting at. I think what we're doing is we're trying to signpost our listeners who are thinking, oh, this sounds like a really fantastic idea. Yeah. What do I do if I need help? Where do I find out extra information?
And there's also the double-fronted office on 99 Melbourne Road.
Okay, yeah.
There's an office there, so it's quite accessible. It's quite central. So it's not something.
And is it supervised all the time? What are its opening hours?
At the moment, it's not. We don't have regular 24/7, but we did have it previously. But because of COVID, it's all finding our feet again.
And this is where we want to get to. So we
Okay.
want to be able to have an open office where there are people that are actually there, 9 to 5, so that if you walk in there, you can ask whatever you need to ask and gain whatever you need to gain. So I think at the moment, no, we're not quite there yet, but that's what we want to try and achieve.
Absolutely, and it's about every journey's got to start somewhere. I mean, what challenges? I mean, you've talked obviously about the fact that COVID has affected you, so that's obviously a challenge. Are there any other challenges, Asma? What other challenges do you kind of envisage?
I think the biggest challenge again was I mentioned is bringing the community onto the same journey. So it's not just about our affiliates. It's not just about the institution, but it's also about the community as a wide. Like I said, there's almost 100,000 Muslims in Leicester. And if you ask them, where do you go to? What Islamic body is your representation?
Yeah.
I don't think everybody would know. So it's really about making them aware, bringing that awareness in place. I mean, we've already started with several workshops. We've got a workshop, an event that's taking place in a couple of weeks, whereby we're bringing forward all sorts of services so that the community can come. So yeah, I mean, I think we talk about our affiliates, and yes, they know FMO, but if you talk to the average layman on the road, do you know who FMO is? I think they probably won't. So it's
absolutely,
so
and I think that's
our biggest challenge, So.
And Asma, I think our ongoing challenge has recently, over the last 10, 15 years, has been funding. See, all Islamic charities are charities, and this is what a lot of the time people don't understand. They'll say, well, why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? Well, we're all volunteers. Everybody's giving as much time as we can, but they've all got full-time jobs. So in terms of manning the office, once we've got the funding, primarily we understand before anybody else that if we've got someone there 24/7, it's going to be brilliant. But it's once we've got the engagement and we've got people on board, then the funding will roll in and we can do that. And it's not the beginning. I think it's more FMO in the first 10 years has done all of this. We had a running office, everybody knew, the engagement was there. But as time evolved, we didn't have the people there in place, and then COVID happened. So it's almost like we revitalizing and starting again with
which
the
is
new
fair
vision,
enough, absolutely.
which is what Asma's doing, and everything she's saying is what we all want to carry forward.
Yeah. So, I mean, how are we going to achieve it? I think at the moment what we've started to look at is our FMO already has an established team. We want to identify what skills we have within our team and plug any missing gaps. So naturally, we want to harness the skills that we've got and utilize those skills so that we can start looking at projects that we can advocate people to kind of move on to. We want to redesign our website. We definitely need the right tools and the resources available so that our affiliates and our community members can self-serve. So you go onto this website, you can submit inquiries, you can find...
that sounds fabulous.
You can find these 200 organisations that we're affiliated with. You can find out who they are, what they need, and if you need any particular services, we can.
That sounds amazing. So is that like a directory? So people can go onto your website and there is a directory of services that are available. That sounds superb. MashaAllah. That sounds really effective.
If there's anybody out there that's got these skills who can contribute some time as well, then we could definitely do with having more people on board in terms of doing that, isn't it?
Yeah. So inshallah, hopefully again, through our portal, through this website, once we're able to get it revamped, we should be able to start collecting a database of volunteers. Like Shifa said, everybody here is on a volunteer basis, which is great to a certain extent. But I think the reality of it is we probably need to start thinking about self-funding. So yes, we can apply for funding, but it's not.
You need somebody there who's there 9 to 5 to manage
in order to up our game and get into that professional level. We need to start looking at how we're going to create an income so that we can actually employ people, because we do need employed people. We do need people to attend and sit in the office and be there. So that our chair's got some amazing ideas on how to kind of go there. So just watch that space. So that hopefully there's something new coming. And then I think the other thing for us is engaging with the community. So some absolutely amazing achievements. But again, it's does the community know that we've achieved this? So it's about how do we showcase what we're doing on a day-to-day basis so that people are aware. So these conversations about, okay, well, what is it that they do? We kind of start eradicating that.
Oh, no, absolutely, which is why I asked about the social media, because I think, that's a platform where I think a lot of people can be aware of what you're doing, and that might be, a space where you do showcase what's going on, because that's where people, that's the direction people are going in.
Yeah, and I think Asma touched on that as well, that you wanted to move that forward.
Yeah. So, like we've just discussed, we've got the first event being kicked off on the 29th of April.
Okay.
So that will be hopefully one of many events that will happen. So I suppose, it's like, I did a lot of work with kid organisation, a couple of years ago. The minute you said, okay, I was running an event, especially when it was a ladies' event, everybody was so excited. And that's kind of what we want to drive towards. We need to get FMO in a space where when these events are run, people just know what they're going to get.
It's a household name, and that's kind of what you're trying to achieve.
Just so to let people know, it's at Crown Hills Community School. It's on the 29th. It's a sharing information organisation. We've got large names on board like the Metropolitan Police, Department of Work and Pensions, NHS, County Council. They'll be talking about recruitment, what they do, how people can to apply for jobs.
Is it a drop-in? Is it sort of like an expo where people have got stalls, right? Where people have got stalls and they can find information.
It's an information sharing, but it's also where they can network as well, and they can find positive things. That FMO has put that together, getting all these people on board. And again, it's a local, national.
Well, that's something you need to put on your Instagram. Your day. You mentioned Crown Hills Community College. You mentioned
I think
it's an extremely useful event. I mean, we've even got the apprenticeship people coming down. So for all our youngsters out there that are looking
the council apprenticeships, Leicester College apprenticeships.
I mean, it sounds
the poster,
fabulous.
I think they just circulated it yesterday.
Mashallah.
But we're going to get that on as well. Yeah.
Because you want FMO to be a household name, and this, as you said, this is getting people in through the doors, and this is getting people interested, engaged, talking about it.
And I suppose for a lot of people like that are listening to this, probably thinking, well, I already know. I don't really need.
And I think
FMO
that's the thing.
me.
Everyone's kind of heard of FMO somewhere in the distance, but it's about bringing it right back close again.
Bringing it right back, but we've got to, I suppose what we've also got to remember is our community is extremely diverse and very different to what it looked like 10
and changing.
Years ago, 20, and it rapidly
the demographic
changing.
Is changing dramatically.
And there are so many new migrants coming. They don't know.
No,
they just
won't.
don't know. And when you're new to a country, to a city, you've got so much more to contend with that. This is probably the last thing you're going to be thinking about, where do I go for this? So it'd be good to be able to kind of revamp and reignite, the whole vision.
And just one thing, on the actual committee, we do try and get equal representation from different communities, and we do try and do work with them as well. So just a couple of things off the top of my head. I'm thinking with the Somali community, when there was a sad murder of MP David Ames, we facilitated key personnel meetings with them. With the Turkish community, when the earthquake struck, we went to the Turkish community. When the Sri Lankans were scared of the cremation, like I said, in the COVID period, we facilitated the meetings to make sure that didn't happen. So just to put that in there, Asma, that we will be carrying that forward with the new communities, but there is a lot that we are doing, but we need to, like you say, showcase
because
that.
Leicester's changing constantly, and you've kind of mentioned this in kind of one of your as part of your as part of your challenges. But how else do you foresee FMO being able to do all of these new things that you'd like to kind of incorporate?
Well, like I said, reorganizing, reshuffling, redefining what our vision is, redefining what our objectives are, engaging with our wider team and our affiliates, bringing everybody on board onto this journey. And again, so what we'll do is we will look at what these objectives are. We'll create action plans. We need to take accountability. The FMO team will, start taking accountability of actually what needs to be delivered. We've already made some headways with gaining a seat at the table, but really understanding where are those seats? Who do we need to gain affiliation with in order to deliver for our community? What are those relationships, and do we have the right relationships, or do we need to make new relationships? But really start making, getting seats at those tables where actually we can make an impact.
Asma said the key point here is engaging the community. There's so much talent out there, and when we're volunteering, we're looking at what is our strong thing that we could give to FMO.
I mean, just to interrupt though, Shifa, I mean, you're talking about moving things forward, and there are listeners at home who are thinking, well, can I get involved? How do I get involved? Do I want to get involved? I mean, are you suggesting that there is space at the table for our listeners? Are you wanting people to get in touch?
Hugely.
And is this and how would they go about doing that? Who would they contact? I mean, say something now for the listeners so that they can get involved if they want to.
So at the moment, the FMO website does have a contact us page. There is a contact number there and an email address. Absolutely, you can, and if you know any of us on a personal level, just contact us.
I think the best thing would be either email or telephone. A lot of the members, there's Brother Suleiman Nandi. He's very well known.
Oh, he was on the radio last year.
Just a text to them, right? He's very closely thinking. There's brother Najib, who's the chair. Najib
He was on last. He was on last week.
Musa Saleh, again,
He
he's
was
very
on
well
last week.
things.
Yep.
We've got Habiba Patel. She's
Okay,
worked
mashallah.
at many of the colleges, schools. She's from FCPM. You got Sister Yasmin Surti. Anybody who's
Mashallah.
into anything knows Sister Yasmin Surti. You got myself,
Inshallah.
Shifa Chachia. You got Malana Umar Ganji. These are all
Okay.
household names. There's Malana Mushtaq Giga. There's so many people.
But you
that
see,
have
the
things.
people, I mean, obviously.
Also, is Salim Lorgat from Islamic Relief. He's on the trust.
Okay.
So these are all people that are very well known to most
But
people.
just to point out the obvious, you're trying to diversify. You're trying to. A lot of the names that you've mentioned are communities from the well-established communities from Leicester from 40 years ago, 30 years ago. And what Asma's quite rightly pointed out, our demographic is changing.
It is.
We're not trying to. We don't want necessarily, am I right in saying, more of the same, but you also want to attract new. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No, what we're saying
Sorry.
is these are the people that we know that
Okay.
would contact. But
Right.
in terms of getting those people, you know what Asma just hit the nail on the head when she said there's a lot of difficult conversations. So our chair is going to all different communities,
Okay,
like the
mashallah.
Turkish, he's been going to all the other different
The minority communities
yeah, the
within
minority
Leicester.
communities, but also the communities that are coming in. So the Syrian refugees, we're trying to get them on board. Yesterday they were at the Oadby and Wigston.
I
Iftar.
saw a photograph of that somewhere.
And if you just look at that picture, there's people that are not the people that I would recognise
No,
from
for
the
sure.
sub-Asian continent sort of background. They were different people, different colours, different things, but they were all Muslim.
Absolutely, and it's what you
that's
said. What
it
you
is.
said at the start about
So
unity.
it is having those difficult discussions and also reaching out to them. But when we're in a strong position, people want to join you, and that's why it's a bit of a catch-22, right? So it's like it's working on one side, but trying to get the other side to join hands as well. So there's a lot of work still there, which we're all trying to get together to do. But send us an email, get in touch with these people. The more names we've got, everyone's got their own little hub. Right. So
absolutely.
if you could just say some students at universities, they know people from different backgrounds, So this would be ideal for us.
Oh no, absolutely,
for them to get the word out there.
Absolutely. And this is why I'm sort of saying, are we here on this radio show to say, if you're listening and you want to be involved, contact us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Contact us.
Is there anything else you want to? Is there anything else you want to say, Asma? I mean,
And I suppose once we start working towards some of our kind of long-term goals and objectives, we'll get a bit more organised. We need to get a bit more organised. So the aim, so what we'd like to be, we want to be in a space where actually we can actually start sending monthly newsletters or weekly.
yeah.
So as a community, you can see what FMO is delivering. You can see what they're trying to deliver. You can see the challenges. You can actually, read up on actually where they're heading. We want to implement an open door policy where people can just be open and say, actually, could we do this, or should we do this, or perhaps we should be doing this, and that needs to be a free format for anybody out there within the community. We talked about obviously generating some revenue. I think that's absolutely critical. So we really do need to make headway because what we want to turn FMO into is an absolutely professional, organised establishment that has a great reputation. And I think that's kind of where we want to take FMO into the
to be fair, Shifa started the show with telling us lots of things that have been achieved, and I think those of us who have been in Leicester for a very long time, or those of us who have parents who arrived in the 70s. Are probably aware of what's going on, but it's going back to what you were saying, Asma. We need to signpost for the new communities.
and our youth.
Absolutely, and because those are the people who are going to take up the spaces of the great names that you've mentioned, and they need to be trained up. They need to be trained up, but they also bring new visions to the table, and I think it's about sharing expertise.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we need to lay the foundation down for the future generations. Things have changed. Challenges have changed. Yeah, needs have changed, and the hot topics of discussions are not what they were 20 years ago. So things are moving quite rapidly. There are new challenges.
Absolutely,
and we've got to continue to move with them. And we've got to get the next generation ready.
Oh yeah, and I think your fair point. I like the idea about kind of difficult topics. I think you're very right, and I think the needs, when FMO started, like you said, there were no masajid, there was no halal food in the hospitals. The needs were very, very different. Now the needs are far greater, and of course with the internet and our reach is greater, and so therefore we need to work that little bit harder to keep up. We've got about 10 or so minutes left. So the question now is, if we fast forward 10 years, and I'll ask Shifa first, if we fast forward 10 years, what do you hope that FMO will have achieved? And then obviously I'll ask Asma what you think.
Well, primarily, we have to understand that FMO is an organisation that supports the community. We're out there to provide a service. So what we want is for all the community members to feel that they are equal in society, right? That they have equal opportunities. When we look at the demographics, at the end of the day, we're the second largest ethnic minority community group within Leicestershire.
Okay.
But if you look at our representation and how we are actually treated, it's on a level it's not the same.
No.
And we want our community on the ground to feel actually what I say matters. When I go to work, the facilities I'll need as a Muslim will be considered, and that's something that we want to see happen, and everybody to have that confidence. We want a united Leicestershire so that we can all celebrate our difference, right? As Muslims with different organisations, but when it comes to the big issues, we've got one person or one body, and everybody comes together.
Right.
Only that way will we be recognised as a strong influencer. We want to establish the framework that we've already had in the past. We want it, like Asma said, and I really, really like the idea. We want it to be a household name, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Who you going to call FMO? Yeah, you pick the phone up, FMO. Absolutely. No, I like
but
that.
One thing is that what I really have to say, being on board for quite many years now, is that often in our past, our community always pass the buck because somebody else is going to do it.
Yes.
And what we really want is we want everybody to feel that they're part of FMO.
It's about taking ownership, isn't it, to a certain extent?
Also how they could help, rather than being the people to say, well, what is FMO doing? Realise that FMO is your organisation to serve you, and we're here to help you because help not you, but help us. It's that big us that we got to.
I was just going to say, are you suggesting it's a two-way kind of situation, and you want more people to be on board? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I want people to realise that they are part of FMO. FMO is a federation of Muslims, and that word, the key word, Muslim, and the word organisation was put there because we wanted to organise. When it first started, many years ago, I was reading up on this. The main point was we wanted to organise a very broken community because they had just come here and they said we want to give it some structure.
And the aims and objectives are still pretty much the same.
And even now, although we are diverse, although we've got social media, although we've moved along, but actually we still want to organise Muslims together to work so we flow in the right direction. So it's very important for everybody to think, I'm part of FMO, I'm part of that community, and when something goes wrong, rather than, well, who are we going to call sort of thing, sort of like, what can I do? This is what I could do to help, right? And get on board. So this is youngsters when they things like, on the websites, sending postal things out. Somebody who, if there is somebody at home who wants a bit of experience, say, well, I could come four days a week in the office for 4 hours a day. I can man the office. I'll get experience. It'll look good on my CV. There's so many students sitting at home. I'm looking for a job. I need experience. But
absolutely,
there's no commitment there. And that's what we're saying, that everybody's got to do their little piece. And actually, I want to read this, but I feel so guilty because Asma's put this little bit together about piece of the puzzle. So I'm going to let her do it.
Okay. I'll move over. Do you want me to move over to Asma? Do you want to?
I'll let Asma do it because she's put the hard work in.
No worries. What is your vision? Because obviously Shifa, a veteran, been there a long time, seen a lot of success. You're very new, and obviously you have a vision. Where do you see FMO in 10 years' time?
I think being that household name, absolutely. Okay. An FMO that is extremely strong and confident, and that represents the entire Muslim community of Leicester and Leicestershire. So we're not just thinking of kind of the Leicester. An establishment that has a framework that supports all Muslim requirements, and I want in 10 years' time, I want my children to be able to be employed, be able to practice their faith, be able to get promotions, be absolutely equal, not have to feel at the back of their mind that was that decision made because of my hijab, was that decision made because of my jubba or my faith. And I think at the moment, I think we all feel it. I think
absolutely.
There are points where we all feel it. So, in 10 years' time, I would love to be able to sit there and hopefully my children and my grandchildren be able to say, you know what, things are really, really changing. Equal. It's changed. When we tell them about how it was in the past, they'll be like, really? Is that how it was?
I mean, don't knock what, we've come a long way. The fact that we're sat here in this studio with our hijabs on and we have 45 minutes or an hour of a show, that in itself is progress.
And I think that's probably, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the key things that's probably want to mention is, I think it was mentioned in last week's shows, we're women.
Absolutely.
where's that
State
here?
the obvious,
Yeah,
but
right?
absolutely.
And you know, there is a stigma out there that women, you know, really don't get involved, and women
actually,
can't.
Asma, I'm so
And that
glad
is
you
so
said that.
so not true for
No.
FMO. Some of, you know, the brightest and the strongest are women, and
Asma, I've really got to put that. Sorry, I should have said this well ago. You know, there's this misconception out there that FMO is men. They're all men, and that's not true. In fact, our secretary is a female, and throughout all the years, we have been given that equal opportunities.
Mashallah.
So, and FMO has really promoted that. Sorry, Asma.
I mean, I was, to be fair, my comment wasn't based specifically on FMO. I think it's based on the kind of like, you know, the wider community, and the fact that, you know, we do have our seat at some tables. And so alhamdulillah, you know, we have made some progress. But as you quite rightly pointed out, for our children, there are still challenges, and there are still, you know, there are still stereotypes out there about what Muslims do and don't do. And unfortunately, we're not always painted in a very positive light. And I guess, you know, what you're saying with FMO, absolutely.
And get overlooked, I think. And another thing is, you know, as a mandatory, I would like to see FMO being consulted as a mandatory on all policy making, all decision making.
Okay.
You know, so there are.
And you're talking within kind of council offices, you're talking in the workplace, you're talking further afield. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You know, an FMO that has a fantastic reputation, and I think a message. Okay, I'll give my final line. Which
Okay, we have got about 5 minutes left, but go on. What are your messages?
My message to the community is, look, you know, we all have to make a difference. Every single one of us needs to try to unite all of us. You know, it's a responsibility that we all carry, whether we're young, whether we're old, whether we come from whatever background we come from, wherever country we originated from. We all owe it to our community to support, to unite. Let's forget the differences. Let's unite. Let's strengthen. Let's agree. Let's mobilize. And each one of us is part of that moving puzzle.
Which is what you were talking about earlier.
Let's build this puzzle together, and let's unite. And together we can absolutely accomplish this body. We can make this organisation the foundation of Leicester and Leicestershire. And you know, I'm confident that we will make other cities turn towards us and say, "Wow, what an example!"
I love that idea. I think that's amazing. I think, you know, sitting here and being the interview, one of the things that's come across to me quite strongly is that you're talking about unity. I think you're talking about brotherhood, you're talking about sisterhood, and you're talking about Leicestershire. You're talking about, you know, some great things. And I guess, you know, and I like the passion, I like the energy, I like the idea that you can really see great things happening. And I hope the listeners who are listening at home can see that as well. And, you know, look out for flyers for the event that's happening at Crown Hills. Look out for changes in the website, look out for ways in which you can get involved, look out for changes in social media. And you know what I'm going to say to the listeners is, if you do want to get involved, get in touch with these people, because it sounds to me very much like, you know, there's a space for you at the table. So, you know, please do be in touch.
Yes, it's Sabiha, every individual counts, and the one message we just want them to go away is one voice. We're all working together.
Mashallah. Okay, I like that. We've got a couple of minutes left. Is there anything else you want to say, Shifa, in your couple of minutes?
No, I just want to say that I've always found FMO to be very promoting of equal opportunities to females, and you know, they promote women empowerment, but they do it within the framework of the establishments within the community, and we've always had that as a foundation. And I've always wanted to say that, because, you know, people will say to me, "Oh, but do you go to the meetings? Do they let you?" And you know what? One thing I have to say, and I really have to give credit to all the brothers here, they will always make sure that like when we go to a meeting, it will always be the women will have the nice areas, we'll have food provided, because I think they always feel that actually in the media it's always promoted as if we don't.
And the women need to be looked after. Shifa, I'm just going to interrupt. It just says, Jazakallah, ladies, in being involved in an organisation that makes a difference in our community. And that's come from one of our listeners, which is lovely to hear. And it's just exactly what you've just said. You're looked after, you're fed, you know, they make sure that you are not being neglected.
And more than anything, Sabiha, they listen. They do listen. There's a lot of organisations where actually you're just a tick box.
Yeah. Okay, alhamdulillah. We've got about a minute or so left. Final words, Asma, what would you like to say?
No, again, I can't, you know, I mean, obviously I've not got the history, but, you know, looking at where we are and where we're heading is absolutely achievable. And I would just ask the community to just unite and join us on this journey.
Right, lovely. I love your positive attitude. Ladies, it's been lovely listening to you. I've got about a minute left. What I do want to say is it's been a real pleasure being here, and I hope, you know, FMO, inshallah, goes from strength to strength, and everybody, you know, in 10 years' time, we are this one big family. On a completely different note, I'm just going to read out a couple of things. The first thing I want to say to all our listeners is please stay tuned. Do not switch off. I see Brother Irfan in the studio behind me. He is going to do his interview with Aisha Sida, who is one amazing individual. So please make sure you stay tuned to that. The other thing that I do want to mention is that we, Ramadan FM, are supporting Leicester Hospital's charity to create a spiritual care centre at the Leicester Royal Infirmary. And this is a space that can be used by and for everybody. So please, if you can support that, that would be absolutely amazing.
Sabiha,
lost my
FMO's
train
been
of thread.
involved in that as well.
FMO's been involved in that.
Just bring that in, please.
Just to
Thank you.
recap, you've been listening to me, Sabiha, on Ramadan FM 87.7 FM, and in the studio with me today I had Shifa, who is an executive committee member from the FMO, and I've also had in the studio with me Asma Dahelvy, who is a project manager for FMO. Shifa is our veteran. Asma is new to the game, but inshallah, you know, may Allah grant you every success and let
Jazakallah for having
FMO
us.
be a household name in our community.